I am a sucker for a good visual novel because I have to be annoying and pretentious about every interest I have, and that includes video games. The genre of interactive fiction has not only seen immense growth over the past decade, it has also evolved into one of the most experimental storytelling methods out there. Although they first originated in Japan, visual novels have found themselves appearing more and more in the West, especially via small developers due to their accessibility. This new era of visual novels brought us plenty of landmark titles, such as Doki Doki Literature Club, Slay the Princess, and Valhalla. These games are examples of incredibly rich, detailed, book-like visual novels, which I absolutely adore. However, today's focus, Emily is Away, is short, sweet, and spiral-inducing. It's no secret that nostalgic games have also had their moment in the spotlight recently, particularly with the renaissance of pixel art. We've seen a massive influx of nostalgic everything, from the Frutiger Arrow aesthetics of the 2000s to the emo revival happening now. The kids of the 90s and 2000s are suddenly old enough to experience nostalgia for what once was, and this game knows that. Emily is Away takes place over the span of 5 years, from 2002 to 2006. You play as a near-graduation high school student chatting back and forth with your friend Emily, or Emerly35, on an instant messenger called EOL. The game has 5 chapters, each one a year out from the last, exploring your and Emily's transition to college life. It's outfitted with lots of small details to aid in immersion, like sound effects, screen names, and pixel art icons. One run will take you only about 40 minutes, give or take. Like I said, it's short, but it's also one of the most accurate and devastating representations of growing up and growing apart that I've seen. Let's talk about Emily is Away. This video will contain spoilers, and I highly recommend playing the game yourself if you haven't already. It's one of those things that you'll really want to experience firsthand. Also, quick trigger warning for passing mentions of domestic abuse. The first game in the series, which I'll be focusing on today, is free on itch.io and Steam if you want to play it. In any case, we're going to start with a bit of background. Emily is Away was developed by Kyle Seeley and released in 2015, making waves with plenty of big-name YouTube gaming channels at the time. Indie games were having quite the hoedown that particular year, especially in terms of content creator coverage, which gave the game quite a considerable boost. Seeley aimed to produce a full recreation of social media from the early internet and put you in the shoes of a down-bad high school senior. Once you pick your screen name and icon, preferably with leet speak, you'll load into Chapter 1, 2002. You can pick from 3 dialogue options to greet Emily once she logs in, typing random keys on your keyboard to fill up the message. She'll comment on your icon choice, depending on what you picked, and start a pretty generic, friendly conversation, one you'd have in real life. You have a simple check-in with one another. She'll ask you about your music taste, because she's unfortunately a Coldplay enjoyer. We all have our faults. Music plays a large part in the series, but more on that later. Since EIA is a Choices Matter game, different dialogue selections will influence the story at large. Your first big choice comes when you're asked if you're going to a kid named Travis's party. You can ask if Emily's going, tell her you're not sure, or call Travis a dick. Emily will steer you in the direction of going to the party, reminiscing about how your high school years have flown by. Ultimately, it's your choice whether or not you'd like to go. Another character named Brad is brought up, and Emily says he won't stop sending her messages about wanting to talk. She seems fairly disinterested and moves back to the topic of college quickly. All of the response options here lead you to ask if she's decided on a school, to which she replies that she hasn't just yet. You're prompted to pick a school of your own. You can choose between art, engineering, or, God forbid, business school. When you make important choices, a little notice will pop up to let you know that you've chosen your path, which is terrifying. Emily will compliment you on your talents, reassuring you that you'll succeed, and then asks you to promise that you'll be there for her as you transition into college life. You can reply with absolutely, I'll try my best, or I can't promise. Since you type everything out, you can see typos and revised sentences, which is one thing I love about this game. After you make your selection, you'll type that Emily is your best friend and then backspace and replace it with one of your best friends. A pause so you don't seem too needy. She says that Julie, someone from a class you share, will be there to pick her up soon. soon and asks if you'll be tagging along. You can go, stay home, or flat out refuse. This is where the story branches off a bit. If you choose to stay home, she'll ask you to help her deal with Brad since you're free. If you choose to go, you'll tag along with her and Julie. The two of you say your goodbyes, and this ends chapter 1 with Emily posting her away message. At the beginning of each new chapter, you unlock more icons that are related to the year you're in. Chapter 2, which takes place during your freshman year of college, begins with Emily reaching out to you first. You'll start the casual portion of the conversation with more music talk, being asked if you like Snow Patrol, which, by the way, if you know nothing about Snow Patrol and try to make a guess, you'll get busted. Good thing I was named a beacon of truth by the United States government. You'll chat about your experiences with whatever schools you chose. It's then time to decide your plans for the night: house party, group project, or a quiet hangout. Emily will say that she doesn't have any plans, either due to Travis having surf club or Brad having band practice, depending on whether or not you chose to attend the party last year. She lets you know that she's dating the aforementioned dude, telling you the story of how they got together, where you seem a little snippy. In response, you can ask one of 3 questions. What's he like? Do you love him? Or is he your best friend? She'll say that love is a strong word and that he is definitely her best friend. The second message she sends is, I mean, sometimes he's a jerk, but when it's good, it's really good, which is also known as one of those sentences that makes your stomach boil itself alive. You question further about what that means. Through each different option, she'll tell you that he gets nasty when they argue and that they tend to disagree a lot, which she attributes to them both being stubborn. After you reply, she assures you that he's not abusive and in some cases says you're blowing things out of proportion. In every dialogue option after this prompt, you seem to reel yourself in. He seems like a fucking asshole turns into he seems like a jerk. I really care about you is dialed back to there are people who really care about you. She brushes it off, saying that they're fine and she doesn't want to discuss it anymore. You can choose to end the conversation or keep prying. If you push, she'll say she can take care of herself and rush you off to see your friends. Even if you try to stay, she won't continue the conversation. Her tone changes from friendliness to a harsher edge if you pry, even though the sentiment remains the same with both options. This ends the chapter, moving us to chapter 3 in 2004. When this conversation begins, the two of you haven't quite been keeping in touch. You exchange pleasantries, and your new friend Emma is mentioned for the first time. You can describe her as a friend, a girl you like, or just some girl. Wow, seems like things are going really well. That's just so great, is a really fun sentence to look at when you can't tell tone over text. When you ask how things are going in her life, she admits her and Brad/Travis, or Bravis if you will, have broken up. The two shared a group of friends, and Emily's been feeling alone since the split. You can lend her your listening ear for a bit, and she'll thank you for being there for her. You can change the subject, call out her friends, or ask why they broke up. You have the chance to learn a few different things from this choice. That her friends abandoned her in favor of Bravis, and that the reason they broke up is that they simply grew apart from one another. She'll break down in front of you, letting her guard slip, and you'll comfort her through it, assuring her that she does have support and that you're there for her. Emily thanks you for listening and tells you she hasn't gotten a chance to vent yet. And then she pops the "can I ask you something," which is enough to kill a moderately high blood pressured person. Promise you won't hate me? The question again hinges on whether or not you went to Travis's party. If you didn't go, she asks why you chose not to. Emily says that she wishes you had gone, that she had a plan to ditch Julie and hang out with you instead. How things might have been different if you were there. If you did go to the party, she reminds you that the two of you went on a walk and gazed at the stars together alone. She asks why you didn't kiss her. It's a moment of looking back on two things that you never could have done. It's a missed connection that was never a connection in the first place. If you're like, why are you talking about a college situationship simulator? Please hang on, okay? I know. Hold tight. Look, here's some Subway Surfers gameplay. You happy now? Anyway, no matter what choice you make, she'll bring up coming to visit over the weekend. In my opinion, this is the biggest choice you'll have to make in the game. You can just say yes, set an expectation that it's just as friends, or tell her no. If you set boundaries, she'll say she wasn't looking for anything like that and enthuse about the trip. If you simply let her come, she'll share her excitement. If you flat out say no, she'll try to convince you, but staying firm makes her upset. She reminds you of when you said you'd be there for her, angry that you aren't. If you chose one of the options that lets her visit, you have to decide what you'll do about your plans with Emma. I love the similarities between the names here. It makes you feel like you've picked out some form of a replacement for Emily. If you lie to Emma, that'll come up a little later. Then she'll ask you to pick an activity to do while she's there. You'll also have to decide if you want alcohol involved. She once again expresses her excitement, and that ends chapter 3, and also the godless year of 2004. Chapter 4 begins with Emily sending a curt "hey" after you haven't spoken in some time. She says she's been going through a lot lately, not lending you any details, and cuts straight to the chase. She wants to talk about things and clear the tension. If you back out of the conversation, she tells you to think about someone other than yourself for once, and puts up her away message. If you do choose to talk, she'll say things have felt weird since she asked to come over. If you allowed her to come point blank, you find out the two of you hooked up after hanging, and she asks if you planned the whole thing in advance. Replying that you didn't know or that it wasn't planned will elicit similar responses about how everything seemed orchestrated. If the two of you drank, she'll mention how drunk you both got. If you say that you hoped you would hook up, she'll mention that she was incredibly vulnerable at the time and that you must have known that. The messages that follow are tense and uncomfortable and melancholy, obviously. If you had her over as just a friend, things will go quite a bit differently. The chat starts off the same, but she asks if you had feelings for her when she came by. Emily believes that things aligned for both of you at this time, and wishes something had happened between you. Two paths that should have crossed, but just kept moving on. Another lost opportunity, something you can't go back and change. It's just gone. If you chose not to let her come at all, things remain stiff, and she expresses her disappointment that you weren't there when she needed someone. If you haven't caught on yet, there's no good ending with any of these options. She becomes less willing to share with you, less talkative each chapter. You can ask if you're still friends, to which she replies, "Yeah, at least I think so," or if things will ever be the same. She says she doesn't know. She'll thank you earnestly for talking about things, and you move back onto that flowless conversation about school, friends, and possible lovers. She brings up Emma again, asking how things are going with that. You return to having nothing to say. She'll then break off from the dull conversation and say talking feels hard at the moment. This is the cue for both of you to sign off, and chapter 4 comes to a close. We pick back up a year later in your senior year of college in 2006. You're the first to send a message this time. The log starts off noticeably sluggish and awkward. You slog through the usual small talk before Emily lets you know that she and Bravis are back together. If you mention how bad their breakup was, she'll say it was only so rough because they truly cared for one another. I don't give a shit about Bravis. I hope he dies. I don't care. I mean, that is if you chose to talk things through with Emily. If you didn't, she tells you she doesn't want to talk, and the title screen rolls. No closure, no nothing, just an away message. But if the game continues, you chat aimlessly, like, aim. The lame police are at my door. They have a baton. I didn't know my kneecaps could go in like that. By this time, your relationship with Emma may have grown a bit strained. If you lied to her about meeting Emily, you'll say that she found out and got understandably upset. If you ditched her, something similar will happen, and she'll sometimes simply feel uncomfortable with the two of you meeting up at all. College has almost come to a close by now. You're two very different people from who you were when this all began. When you try to bring up your years together and reminisce about the past you share, Emily will redirect the conversation away from the past, saying she's tired of reliving memories. You go back to the short questions. Have any plans for graduation? Are you going to move back home? Every answer is short and surface level. It's as if she's trying to minimize the time spent with you. She's no longer asking about your day and what music you're listening to. She's not Emily from 2002. You're not you from 2002. You throw a question and it bounces back into your hand. Soon you'll finally have an option to ask to talk about things, but when you select it, you only get halfway through the message before it morphs into another shallow question. Backspace, backspace, backspace. Can I see you this summer? Nope. Got any homework? Do you ever miss things? Waters down to how are classes? No matter how much you want to, you can't initiate that talk. You can't get that closure. You can't end things for good. You can continue cycling through options, but with each question you ask, one answer is replaced with goodbye. There is physically nothing left to say. You know it's over. When there's only one option left, you say goodbye for the final time, and the game ends with your away message. Like I said, this is a remarkably simple game, but one that portrays its core message so well. It's a game about the inevitability of change and how impermanent relationships are. It's a realistic view of those conversations that just don't flow anymore. When you realize you know nothing about somebody you know you've loved, people who you've told your whole life story to can't recall your birthday anymore. Some things just don't last, no matter how tightly you hold on to them. Emily as a character is everyone who you've ever lost touch with. You can't win her back or fall in love or save the day. It isn't a choice. It's a reality that you have to accept. The game doesn't have a sad ending just to have a sad ending. It's a portrait of relationships that no matter what, for any reason, weren't meant to be. It leaves this empty feeling in your stomach, building and building as you watch her slip away. You can't hold someone hostage in your life forever. Although the immersion and aesthetics are specifically designed to show off the AOL era, the nostalgia and simplicity of that format makes it easy to get lost in for anyone, no matter what generation you're from. The sound effects and typing mechanic make you feel like you're truly talking, which makes it all the more heartbreaking when you can't figure out how to keep talking. This game is nearly 10 years old now, but I think it remains as poignant and upsetting as ever. You can grasp at a world where you're still as close all you want, but it will always fall from your hands. I love this game, and even though it might not be an award-winning RPG, it has a beautiful place. I cannot recommend it enough, especially if you've dealt with a friendship loss in the past couple years. It's gonna hurt really bad, but you know, whatever. I highly recommend playing it. If you want to support the creator, you can also buy Emily is Away 2 and Emily is Away 3, which are also amazing. Thank you so much for watching this video. I really appreciate it. I'm sorry again about my voice. I'm genuinely just not recovering from COVID well. Thank you to all of my members for your continued support. You're the best. Stay safe, stay wonderful, my friends, and I will see you next time. Goodbye.